If your morning coffee feels like the only thing pulling you through the day, and the weight around your waist seems harder to lose no matter what you do, I want you to hear this with an open mind. Your body is not broken, it is changing. And no, there is not a magic spoonful that turns back the clock overnight. But there is one simple thing you can add to your coffee that may help support steadier blood sugar, fewer cravings, and a morning routine that works with your body instead of against it. And the part most people miss is this. If this kind of honest, practical health guidance helps you, subscribe, tap like, and share this with someone you care about. By the time many adults reach their 60s and 70s, the pattern becomes painfully familiar. You wake up tired, you reach for coffee. By 10 in the morning, you are hungry again, even though you ate something. Your pants fit a little tighter around the middle. Your energy comes in waves. Some mornings you feel sharp. Other mornings, you feel like your body is moving through wet cement. I remember seeing this pattern again and again. Good, hardworking people blamed themselves. They thought they had become lazy, weak, or undisciplined. That is usually not the real story. Aging changes muscle, sleep, appetite, activity, and the way the body handles blood sugar and stored fat. And here is what most people get completely wrong. They search for a dramatic fat-burning trick when the bigger issue is often blood sugar swings, loss of muscle, poor sleep, stress, and coffee habits that quietly work against them. Age-related metabolic changes are real, and staying active helps, but the solution is rarely one flashy hack. Now here is the thing. If your coffee is loaded with sugar, sweet creamers, and a pastry on the side, your morning routine may be pushing you toward more hunger, not less. So this should never be a conversation about fantasy. It should be a conversation about what truly helps. I'm Dr. Charles Oliver. I have learned that the smallest daily habits often make the biggest difference over time. Not glamorous habits, real ones. Research from respected medical and health sources shows that coffee can have both benefits and downsides, and cinnamon has shown modest help in some studies involving blood sugar and body weight-related markers. But respected aging research also makes something else clear. Claims that one kitchen ingredient reactivates stem cells in older adults are far ahead of what science has actually proven. That is why I prefer honest advice over hype. First, I want to clear up the phrase that grabs attention: reactivate stem cells. Most people do not realize this, but stem cells are not little sleeping batteries waiting for cinnamon to switch them back on. Stem cells are repair cells that help maintain tissues in the body, and scientists do know that stem cell function changes with age. Their regenerative ability tends to decline, and the environments around them change too. The National Institute on Aging and major reviews on aging both make it clear that this is an active area of research, but it would be misleading to say that a simple coffee add-in has been proven to reactivate stem cells in older adults. That is not where the evidence is. What we can say, honestly, is that better metabolic health supports the body's repair systems more broadly. That matters, and I want you to really pay attention to this part. When people hear that truth, some feel disappointed. I think the real message is more encouraging. Your body responds to patterns. Steadier blood sugar, better sleep, more movement, enough protein, and less excess sugar create a friendlier internal environment. I had a patient once, a retired school librarian, who came to me frustrated because every headline promised a shortcut. She told me, "Doctor, I don't need magic. I need something that fits my life." That is exactly the attitude that gets results. Now, the one thing I like best in coffee for this conversation is cinnamon. Not because it is a miracle, not because it melts fat on contact, but because for some people, especially those dealing with blood sugar ups and downs, cinnamon may offer a modest edge. The National Center for Complementary and Integrative Health notes that systematic reviews have found possible improvements in fasting blood sugar, some blood fats, and body measurements in certain groups, especially people with type 2 diabetes. The key word is modest, not dramatic, not a replacement for medical care, just a small nudge in a better direction. So why does that matter for body fat? Because when your blood sugar rises sharply and drops, hunger often follows. Cravings often follow. Extra snacking often follows. Then people say, "My metabolism is failing." Sometimes the metabolism is not the first problem. The pattern is. A warm cup of coffee with a little cinnamon, especially if it replaces a sugary specialty drink, can become part of a calmer morning routine. It is not the cinnamon alone, it is the entire chain reaction. But wait, this next part is the one that surprises most people. Coffee itself already does some of the heavy lifting people give the spice credit for. Caffeine can modestly raise alertness and thermogenesis, and coffee has been linked in research with several metabolic and health associations. At the same time, major medical sources are careful. The evidence is not conclusive for every claim, and too much caffeine can bring jitters, faster heart rate, reflux, sleep problems, and urinary urgency. In other words, coffee can help, but more is not always better, especially later in the day, and especially if you are sensitive to caffeine. I had a gentleman in his early 70s who told me he was drinking coffee all day to boost fat burning. By evening, he was wired, sleeping poorly, and waking up hungry. We changed almost nothing except the timing. He kept his morning cup, cut the late cups, stopped adding syrup, and started taking a short walk after breakfast. Within a few weeks, he told me he felt less puffy, less desperate for sweets, and more in control. That is how real progress often looks. Quiet, steady, boring even, but powerful. And here is another place people go wrong. They treat coffee like a dessert, a spoonful of sugar, flavored creamer, whipped topping, a muffin on the side. Then they hope the cinnamon will somehow cancel all of that out. It will not. If you put cinnamon into what is basically a liquid milkshake, you have not created a health drink. You have decorated a problem. Now here is the thing. Sometimes the healthiest part of the coffee habit is not what you add. It is what you stop adding. If you want this idea to work in real life, think simple. Brewed coffee, a sprinkle of cinnamon. If you enjoy a little milk, fine. If you need sweetness, use less than you usually do and slowly train your taste buds down. One patient told me she thought she could never enjoy coffee without a very sweet creamer. We reduced it little by little. 3 weeks later, she said, "I can actually taste the coffee now." That matters more than people think, because when the palate calms down, cravings often calm down too. But wait, point number 4 is the one that changes the game for many seniors. Cinnamon in coffee works best when it is attached to a meal pattern that protects muscle. As we age, muscle tends to decline, and that matters because muscle is metabolically active tissue. The more muscle you preserve, the better your body handles everyday energy use, balance, function, and recovery. Coffee with cinnamon may help set the tone for the morning, but if breakfast is only coffee and toast, many people end up hungry, shaky, or overeating later. Older adults often do better when breakfast contains some real protein and fiber. Research in older adults shows that better protein intake, including at breakfast, supports muscle health. Most people do not realize this, but the morning is often where the whole day gets decided. If breakfast steadies you, lunch is easier. If breakfast is mostly caffeine and sugar, the rest of the day becomes a rescue mission. So if you add cinnamon to your coffee, pair it with something that truly nourishes you. Eggs, plain yogurt with nuts, oatmeal with seeds, and some protein on the side. Not because those foods are trendy, because they help reduce that "I need something sweet right now" feeling that derails so many good intentions. I remember a widow in her late 60s who told me, "Doctor, evenings are when I lose the battle." But when we traced it back, the battle was starting at 7:30 in the morning. Coffee, no real breakfast, then grazing all day. We did not overhaul her life. We made her coffee simpler, added cinnamon, and helped her build a better morning plate. A month later, she said the evening cravings had softened. Not vanished, softened. Sometimes that is the win that opens the door to bigger change. Now let us talk safety, because that matters just as much as the hopeful part. Cinnamon is not the same in every jar. Cassia cinnamon, the common kind found in many stores, can contain higher amounts of coumarin, a compound that may be a problem with prolonged high intake, especially for people with liver concerns or sensitivity. NCCIH notes that Ceylon cinnamon contains much less coumarin. So if you enjoy cinnamon regularly, especially daily, choosing Ceylon cinnamon is a reasonable step, and always consult your doctor before making any health changes. That is especially important if you take prescription medicines regularly, have diabetes, or have liver concerns. The same kind of caution applies to coffee. If caffeine makes your heart race, worsens tremor, aggravates reflux, keeps you awake, or sends you to the bathroom every hour, your body is giving you useful information. Listen to it. There is no health prize for pushing through side effects. Some people do better with less coffee, some do better with half calf, some do better with decaf and a consistent breakfast. I tell patients this all the time. The best routine is the one your body can tolerate and your life can sustain. One more helpful point, especially for viewers who say, "Doctor, I love coffee, but caffeine does not love me back." You do not have to force a full-strength cup to copy somebody else's routine. Some of the observed health associations with coffee are not thought to come from caffeine alone, and many people can still enjoy the ritual with less caffeine or even decaf. That means the goal is not to turn yourself into a coffee machine. The goal is to build a breakfast habit that feels steady and sustainable. If half calf lets you enjoy the cup without shakiness, that may be a better choice for you than chasing a stronger, fat-burning effect that leaves you miserable later. But wait, there is one more layer almost nobody talks about. The ritual itself matters. A calm morning cup can slow you down just enough to make one better decision after another. You sip instead of rush. You sit instead of pace. You eat instead of skip. You walk instead of drift back into the chair for another hour. Health is often built in those small transitions. I have seen patients transform not because one ingredient changed their biology overnight, but because one habit changed the tone of the day. And here is a practical trick I have used with many patients. Put the cinnamon near the coffee maker, not in the spice cabinet across the kitchen. That sounds almost too simple, but habits follow convenience. If the healthier version of the routine is easier than the sugary version, you are more likely to stick with it on busy mornings. I had one patient who kept both her cinnamon and a small bowl of chopped nuts beside the coffee station. That visual cue reminded her that breakfast was not just a beverage, it was nourishment. Within weeks, her mid-morning trips to the cookie tin dropped sharply, not because she suddenly had more willpower, because she had a better setup. So here is the practical routine I like. Start with your usual morning coffee. Add a light sprinkle of cinnamon, ideally Ceylon if this is something you plan to do often. Keep the extras modest. Sit down and drink it with, or just after, a breakfast that gives you some protein and some fiber. Then, if you are able, take a short walk, even around the house or down the driveway and back. That simple sequence can support appetite control better than people expect. Coffee may modestly aid alertness and metabolism, cinnamon may modestly support blood sugar for some people, and a more structured breakfast routine often makes the rest of the day easier. And I want you to hear this clearly. Do not judge success by the scale alone in the first week. Judge it by the mid-morning crash. Judge it by whether you feel less frantic around sweets. Judge it by how your clothes fit in 6 weeks. Judge it by whether your routine feels calmer and more stable. That is how sustainable fat loss begins for many older adults. Not with punishment, not with fantasy, with stability. I had a patient who lost very little in the first couple of weeks but told me something more important. She said, "For the first time in years, I don't feel at war with food every morning." That is a bigger victory than most people realize. Because when the fight softens, consistency gets easier. And when consistency gets easier, the body often follows. So, does adding cinnamon to coffee reactivate stem cells and burn fat? The truthful answer is this. There is no good human evidence that a sprinkle of cinnamon in coffee reactivates stem cells. But there is reasonable, evidence-informed logic behind using cinnamon as part of a smarter coffee routine that may help some older adults manage cravings, blood sugar patterns, and weight control habits a little better. That may not sound as flashy as the headlines, but it is a whole lot more useful. Let me bring this home for you. Your body is not failing because you got older. It is asking for a different kind of support. Coffee is not the enemy for most people, and cinnamon is not a miracle. But together, in the right context, they can become part of a morning rhythm that feels steadier, lighter, and more supportive of your goals. The real win is not a fantasy claim about reactivating stem cells overnight. The real win is fewer blood sugar swings, fewer cravings, less hidden sugar in the cup, better morning structure, and a routine you can actually keep. If you take one idea from this, let it be this. Make your coffee work for your health, not against it. Keep it simple. Use cinnamon thoughtfully. Protect your sleep. Protect your muscle. Eat a real breakfast. Move a little after you eat. Those choices may look small, but over months they can change how you feel in a very real way. And please remember this line exactly as I say it. Always consult your doctor before making any health changes. That is not just a formality. It is part of taking yourself seriously. If this spoke to you, share it with a friend, a brother, a sister, or a spouse who starts every day with coffee and wants a smarter way to support their health.